right. Welcome, everybody. We've got some people jumping into the room here. We'll wait just a second to get started. Got a few more people. We're going to get started here in just a minute. Appreciate you all joining. We're going to talk about some cyber liability today. Fun topic. Awesome. All right, just a few more. Okay. All right, well, let's jump into it. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for Understanding Cyber Liability Insurances for Small Businesses, presented by Insurance Canopy. So cyber insurance might not sound like the biggest deal and might sound like something huge tech companies need, but in today's digital world, it's something every business owner should be thinking about and understanding. So whether you're a solo entrepreneur or growing e-commerce brand or a local shop that accepts credit cards, you're more exposed than you think, and that's what we're going to talk about today. That we're going to break it all down, try to put it in simple, practical terms, no jargon, and really just talk about why these policies make sense for these small businesses and how they might be at more risk than they think. I'm Kyle. I'll be moderating for you today. I'm joined by Chris, our insurance expert from Insurance Canopy. Chris is going to walk us through most of the insurance side because this is his area, not so much mine. And then at the end, we're going to do a live Q&A and answer some of the questions submitted ahead of time as well as during the event. Please put your questions down in the Q&A box and we'll try to get to them. So a quick reminder, nothing shared here should be taken as legal advice or insurance advice. For those specific questions about your business, we always recommend you reach out to a licensed insurance professional or, of course, Insurance Canopy. So with that, let's get started. Great to see you again, Chris. Thank you for
Yeah,
joining us.
thank you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. You're one of the best, and we're so excited and happy to have you today. Could you give us just a quick intro on yourself, your background in insurance, before we get started? Just introduce yourself.
Sure, absolutely. My name is Chris Van Leeuwen. My official title is Vice President of Professional Development here at Insurance Canopy, which means that I do a lot of the training and on the insurance topics. I have been in the business since 1987, so I think that's almost 38 years if my math is correct. I'm a third generation insurance professional. My grandfather started the agency way back in the day and, just advanced, and here I am.
Here you are as our insurance guru, we call
Yeah.
you.
Hope I don't disappoint.
I think that CV leads up to it. And I call him CVL sometimes. We call him CVL for short instead of Chris, so you might catch me doing that. So let's dive into it. We brought up this topic because in some of our other sessions, we always talk about some of these add-on policies called cyber liability
Mhm.
insurance. And we'll go through some of the other insurance types, umbrellas, things like that. But I guess, Chris, could you just start off with maybe a little background on this? I know we were just talking about it before we jumped on of maybe a little history or when did cyber
Sure.
liability become an idea in the insurance realm?
Yeah. Yeah. So cyber insurance has been around since the early 2000s. And, the policy was, the concept was generated, the policy was developed, it was out on the market for a number of years. But with a lot of, like many other policies outside the normal general liability or property insurance, it really doesn't catch a lot of steam until you start seeing a lot of activity in the claim world. And so as cyber criminals have gotten more advanced and they've been able to target, as they're kind of moving a little bit away from targeting the large businesses and more going after the small businesses. So we're
Mm.
seeing a lot more claim activity. So it's been the last 3 years, three to 5 years, that we have seen a lot more activity in the purchase of cyber insurance. We've also seen pricing come down in some areas of the cyber insurance. But that's kind of the quick history of that. It's been
Yeah.
around for 20 years, but really have gained steam in the last 5.
That's interesting. And before we get into some of the, claims types or things that it might cover, let's take a step back and separate for our business owners on this call. We've all heard of our general liability policy.
Mhm.
Would that ever tie into cyber claims, or is it definitely a separate policy, add-ons? How does that
Yeah,
work?
it's totally separate. When you think about your general liability, that's going to cover third-party bodily injury and property damage claims for the
Mm,
most part.
okay.
Whereas cyber is not going to cause any bodily injury or property damage. It's going to be more of a financial loss. And so they're totally two separate animals. So if you have general liability, most of the time it's going to exclude any type of cyber policies. If you have
Mm,
what they call a business owner policy, It might have a throw in of a little bit of cyber with your general liability and property insurance. It won't be real robust most of the time, but that's really the difference. Is the general liability is kind of your operational bodily injury and property damage that is caused by your services or operations or products. Cyber would be the financial harm caused by a cyber attack or a breach of a data breach.
That makes sense. And now having done these, I'm now learning that really your general liability is about kind of that getting sued liability.
Yeah,
It's like
exactly, exactly. It's
it's
right.
sure some other things in it, but it's about that. So let's talk about this cyber idea, right?
Okay.
And we think of it, we hear about Experian getting hacked or these massive companies getting hacked. I
Mhm.
guess is it just hacks? Can you kind of run us through like what kind of claims or scenarios are we talking about, especially knowing that our audience is small businesses? Like what kind of cyber liabilities do they have in your mind?
Yeah, and that's a great question. I've done a lot of kind of live seminars, and business owners will say, "Well, do I really have an exposure? I don't do that much e-commerce. I don't do, a lot of credit cards or whatever it might be." But my question is, do you own a computer? Do you have an email? Because if you do, you have an exposure to cyber criminals. And
Hmm.
one of the largest, I think I just pulled up some data, 94% of cyber claims come from phishing or social engineering, which is basically somebody um, kind of tricking you through an email, something to click on. Hey, click on this link. There's an urgency. And then when they click on it and it opens it up and it looks like it might be legitimate, but then they're in watching what you're doing and watching you code in, whatever passwords you have, and they'll be able to gather this data and then they'll be able to, hack into your bank account or get more information from your computer. Um, Ransomware is another big one right now in small businesses, which is a malware that's encrypted and basically shuts your business down, and you have to pay cryptocurrency to actually get your data back. And then the other big one is what they call business email compromise, is where you somebody actually clicks on something through an email, and then somebody is able to put malware or be able to again monitor everything that you're doing. So that's why I'm saying, even if you have an email and that somebody inadvertently just clicks on something, that that can open your business up. And do you want me to just keep rambling here?
No, I know. I think that's no, I think it's extremely interesting because we've all heard of that, right?
Yeah,
Nowadays, and we've all gotten the text. I clicked on one from
yeah,
USPS that said I need to pay 15 cents to make sure my mail was going to show up or
yeah,
be
yeah, yeah.
but took my credit card immediately. So you're saying that or those, we've heard of those, pay this crypto thing. So you're saying a cyber liability policy would potentially cover a business,
Absolutely.
a
Yeah.
claim like that?
Yeah, there's a couple, and we can get into more of that. But I want I don't know if you want me to get into the costs right now, what a claim, how it can affect a business, or
Sure.
you
I
know,
mean, we're having just a conversation and trying
okay,
to share because I'm learning from you and I think our audience is
yeah.
as well. Tell me kind of, yeah,
So
what are some of the large,
just we've had some claims on some small businesses where, so when something happens, when you have a claim or a potential data breach, which you might think is a data breach, you have to hire forensic analysis to come in and see how far that breach goes. So we've had one of a client of ours, small business, had 8 email hacked, and the forensic costs alone were $125,000. We had another one that one email account was hacked, and just the forensic cost was almost $60,000. Now, once you get past that, then it gets into all the notifications and monitoring and PR and
yeah.
all of that. And the average, what they say, the average loss, this was done by Microsoft Security Report, said that the average loss is 255,000 for a small business breach. Because
Wow.
what happens is, if somebody gets breached, it's not just going, well, we think it's only one account. They have to take into consideration everybody you have in your database. So if you have 1,000 clients in your database, you have to monitor and notify all of those 1,000 clients. How many times do you get in the mail sometimes it feels like on a monthly basis. We noticed that you were part of this
Right.
database. You've been hacked. We're going to monitor. Call this number to get free monitoring services. Well, it's free to you, but there's a cost on the back end. So it costs about, what was it? 200, no, $173 per record of a cyber attack. So
I
if you've
am
got 2,500 records of people in the database, I did math, $432,000. And so that's why most businesses that have a cyber attack go out of business in 6 months.
Wow. And it's, I've done enough of these webinars now to kind of know some of the claims types and the risks, and those are astronomical numbers in comparison to my generator broke in my food truck.
Yeah, exactly.
That's so interesting. And maybe you don't know the answer. I'm just curious. When you say records, I mean, a lot of people think, well, I don't keep, my customers' credit cards, or I don't
Right.
keep, any financial or their socials or anything. Do you do you think that that limits that exposure, or are you kind of saying
No,
email?
it's, do you have their name and address and a phone number? That's personal identifiable information. Even if you don't have social security numbers, or if you don't have date of birth, or some of these other, you know, this other data on people, or you know, if you do have somebody that was successful in a phishing, and then they are able to trick you in transferring money out of your account. We've had that happen, to where a
And
business actually, it looked like an email that came from a bank, and they transferred $250,000,
I can
and
share,
it's gone.
I worked for a company that happened to, and that they got the CFO got an email from what looked like the CEO that we needed to transfer out money,
Yep.
and they did it.
Yep.
And next thing you know, oh my gosh, and I worked for another one that got the credit card or the gift card thing, and the poor
Yep.
intern ran out and got all the gift
Yeah.
cards. And
Exactly.
then, and so you're saying that could be covered in
Oh,
what we're
absolutely.
talking about of
Yeah.
cyber
Yeah.
liability.
You
Wow.
think about, so now this isn't, I'm just going outside a little bit, but even the QR codes where people will scan,
Mhm.
cyber criminals will put a fake QR code on there, and you
Mhm.
scan it, and then they can track everything. Or even like the swipe cards,
The
right? They
scammer.
can, the skimmer or
Uh,
whatever.
Skimmer, yeah.
Yeah. So they when you just swipe your credit card, and all of a sudden now they have access to all that, and they're stealing your money. So like I said, it's not just like, hey, I'm going to get your information that you got off your computer, your client information. That's only one thing.
Hmm.
There are so many ways that these cyber criminals are actually, like I said, ransomware. You know, if they shut, imagine if all of a sudden somebody put malware on your computer and you can't run at all,
Hmm.
and they're saying we want $50,000 of cryptocurrency. How is a small business going to do all that? How are they even going to navigate it? How are they going to negotiate it? How are they going to pay it and make sure they get it back?
Right.
So where with the insurance company, that's, they have specialists that do all this, right? And that
Yeah.
help walk you through that. And then if the covered claims there, they pay it.
Wow. I mean, I'm not a small business owner, but I'm sold. And no, I see the value. And we were laughing about this because you shared this on a previous webinar. But the way I look at insurance, having worked now with Insurance Canopy, is passing risk. How much of the
Yeah,
risk do you want to take on, and how much do you want to
exactly.
pass off at a cost, right?
Right.
This feels like a major risk that I'm worried that small business owners maybe aren't thinking about because again, they're not an app.
No.
They
Yeah.
don't have this huge infrastructure IT. But everybody's online, or everybody's got an email, or
Sure.
everybody's got social
Yeah.
media. Let me ask you this, in doing some research for this myself, say I use a Square reader,
Yeah.
and that's kind of how is it, does that create a level of removal from that, from what you understand?
From what I understand,
Yeah.
now, and don't quote me on this because
Hmm.
I understand that a lot of these companies like Square or other credit card processing companies,
Hmm.
in their contract, actually they push the liability back to you. And so you may want to check on that. So where that liability lies, or if I'm using a square, how if somebody hacks it, because when you're looking at a policy, you have what they call first party damages, which protects me, the insured, or the business owner against like the incident response and PR and notification costs and all these things that is going to cause me harm, right? But then you also have third party costs that will, if a third party sues you for damages because of the cyber breach. So if you're using a square and for some reason your client or your customer is hurt because of that in some way financially, you're going to be responsible. They can sue you for that. And so that's where the third party liability in the cyber liability comes into play, is to help pay for those costs. So I don't honestly know what protections or what liability that Square actually takes or passes on. I understand they pass a lot back down to you, going like, not our problem, you deal with it. But it would be something that as a business owner you should check into for sure.
It's the reason I asked the question, because when I was doing some research of previous claims and some of these, it happened, and
Yeah.
I don't know if it was Square, and but it
Right.
was sort of a point of sale system that the small business went, I don't know, I use this one, I assume they've
Yeah.
got the stuff in place, and it came back on them.
Yeah.
And I think, again, when you think, no, I'm a bakery, I'm a lawn care business,
Yeah.
whatever it might be, this could happen to anyone using
Right.
any type of technology, and we're surrounded by technology. And
It is.
I find it interesting. So I'm truly still shocked at some of those claim numbers that you thrown out. And
Yeah, it's very, like I said, it's about $175 to $200 per record, right? And again, it's not the record that was breached, it's the potential records. So if you have stuff on a thumb drive, or how much do you have on on your hard drive? And the reason, you think about, well, why are these cyber criminals going after smaller businesses? You hear about the targets, and we had an insurance company that had ransomware. This was 4 years ago. They were shut down. I think they thought they could get out of it, but it cost them 50 million to get out of it. That's how much they had to pay the cyber criminals to get their data back. But
I think it was a casino chain that recently, Caesars, it recently
yeah,
happened to, that they were shut down, and they
yeah,
hadn't ended up paying it or something like
yeah, they
that.
have to pay. They can't get out. So,
Like,
but they're really looking at smaller businesses, because most small businesses aren't taking the time to train employees. Most small businesses don't have the firewalls and the protections, or the patches and upgrades, or the IT security. They might have malware, or whatever other product out there. But if you're not training your employees, which is a big deal, and that's where a lot of these email breaches come from, is employees, right? Of clicking on something unknowingly, and they could have access to your computer or your employee's computer for months before they, until they get all the data they need to actually, get what they want.
And I was trying to do some research, because I actually had hoped to have some sort of IT expert on this call as well. We weren't able to find somebody to make the time work. But I was trying to do a little bit of research of like, well, what can you do to protect yourself? That's always a section we talk about in this, is
Hmm.
what can we do for risk mitigation?
Hmm.
And honestly, a lot of it's over our small business owner's head, right?
Yeah.
Is these firewalls and things that we're talking about. Of
Yep.
course, employee training is a huge one. Having protocols in place for, definitely, for anything, movement of money, or trying. But again, if we're working with a third party software, or I'm just using an app, I assume those things are in place as a
Right.
small business owner. So
Yeah.
I mean, is there anything that you would add of risk
Yeah.
mitigation?
I mean, it's, I know that small businesses, there's always a cost, right? You got to be, I'm sensitive to that, because to go out and hire an IT firm to do everything can be a challenge also.
Mhm.
But there are also, like in our business, they subscribe to a program that will actually send phishing emails out. And if you click on one, you have to go through the training again. Okay. Or if you report it as phishing, you're going, oh, congratulations, you passed, kind of a thing. And so everybody in our office is absolutely paranoid. So we get something where, because we don't want to do the training over.
Right.
So so we're always like, hey, is this a real email? Kind of a thing, but it makes you more aware. So I think a small business could probably do some searching and say, hey, what are some tools for that we could implement to help train employees? But it's got to be a consistent thing. You've got to get invested in it. But this is one of the fastest growing criminal segments for small businesses in the world right now is cyber criminal or
Yeah,
cyber crimes.
and you were telling me it's ahead of this from 2021 to 23, now 25, it's just exploded.
Yeah.
It's been that they, like you said, the fastest growing and no signs of slowing down, it seems. And again, we all think, well, the big ones are at risk. Once those are protected, everybody. No, that's not, I mean, how many
Yeah.
hundreds of
Yeah. I
thousands
mean, you
of
figure
small
it's low hanging
businesses?
fruit,
Yeah.
right? I mean, it's like, maybe I'm not going to get the 50 million out of this insurance company, but if I can go get 25,000 out of this small business,
Mhm.
because it's only going to take me a week to hack into their system, that's fast money. And they can do that over and over and over. It's just low hanging fruit to them.
So interesting. Other notes that I found online for risk mitigation were using multi-factor
Yeah.
authentication on all accounts. I am the worst at that. I hate doing it, but
Yeah.
hearing this conversation, I see it. The employee education, knowing who has access to what permissions, strong passwords, backup data, stuff
Yeah.
like that. But again, if you're talking about your records access, you can only protect so much.
Yeah. So
And
it's
then
all up, it's all up front. You've got to get it all up front. Like you said, password protection is a big thing.
yeah, no, that's really interesting. And again, I think that's why we wanted to host this session was we've been talking about it, we mentioned it in all of our other ones, and we said, well, let's do a deep dive of why does this
Yeah.
actually matter? And makes
But
it
just
clear to
if I
me.
can share one other thing is
Please.
it was issued by Trusted Internet. They said 61% of all small businesses had a form of cyber attack in 2024. That's big.
That's
So
massive.
yeah, it's big. So to me, you kind of look and say, well, it's not if, more of when, especially if you're not doing anything preventive to be preventative of
Mm.
and training. It just opens you up to you're just a lot more exposed to the actual cyber criminal than you would if you were putting some of these things in place.
Oh, I hope everyone sees this and understands. And I guess not to be too salesy, but I did want to ask the question because I don't know the answer. And I'm sure it depends on every business, much like insurance, but how much are we talking for coverage? I
Yeah,
mean,
it's great. So I'm going to go back to it's like where you said, how much exposure do you want to take on versus push
yeah.
off? I have sold policies for as little as 850 a year. Okay.
Okay.
But I would say, and that's for a million limit. It's not just scaled down. It all comes down to how many records you have, what the industry you're in.
Mm,
If you're in a healthcare industry, it's probably going to be more expensive because you have all the kind of HIPAA issues and
mm.
you got all of the sensitive data in there. Um, but I would say that our average is probably around $1,100 a year for $1 million worth of coverage.
So 90 bucks a month or 100
Yeah,
bucks kind of
yeah,
thing, if it's able to be
yep,
amortized. Interesting. And for passing off the kind of risk that, again, 500,000, $800,000
yeah,
liability is crazy.
yeah.
I'm curious, are you seeing, if we're seeing 60% of businesses, are you seeing the growth in the policies to match the number of crimes, or is this really
No,
unheard of?
it it's. I think that small businesses think they're semi-immune for some reason,
Hmm.
or they don't. It's like, why would somebody just target little old me, kind of a
Hmm.
thing?
Hmm.
Um, and so I don't think they are seeing the value of the cyber policy, but that's why I think it's really important what you're doing is to get the information out because it is growing so fast and it's affecting small businesses so much. And again, because the costs to mitigate this are so high that 6 months after a cyber attack, if you don't have cyber insurance, you're out of business
Mm.
because nobody can sustain $200,000-300,000 unplanned or maybe
Hmm.
even planned. And so we are trying to push it, but we've got to get small business owners to see the value of it and go, yeah, I do have an exposure. I don't want to take that on, and it's worth the $1,100-$1,200 to kind of push that off my plate and have some peace of mind.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that makes sense. And again, I wasn't sure if you were going to say thousands. I wasn't sure,
Nah,
that's why
yeah.
I asked.
I would just say that that's, again, we've sold a lot at 8 to 850.
Mhm.
But I would say the average is probably around the 1100.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I appreciate, not to be too salesy, we're here for information.
No, you're all right.
I think it makes sense, and that's why I wanted to bring it up. Before we take some of the questions from the audience, anything else you'd add about cyber? I know you did a little bit of research for this, and I
I
appreciate
would
you
I would
being
just
ready.
say, when you're looking, because I would just say that when you're looking, make sure you have both first and third party coverage. Okay. Because the first party, again, there's a lot of policies that just do first party coverage, which is protecting me, the insured, against, to mitigate the claim, the ransom payments, the notifications, the PR, the forensic costs, and all that. But the third party will protect you for if somebody else is injured financially and they sue you because of that breach, then that's what's going to pay that other person.
Got it. Okay, so that's funny enough. I was looking through some of our questions, and that was one of them. I'm just going to read it here. I run a small hair care salon. Uh, what if my client sues me for a breach?
Yeah, that's it. That's third party coverage.
Interesting. So that wouldn't even, how does that relate then with general liability?
So again, general liability is okay. In her example, would be, let's say she put some, coloring or chemical on their hair, burn
Okay.
their scalp. That's a bodily injury claim, right? That's where the general liability comes into play. Cyber is a financial harm, right? So they're suing you because something was breached. I've lost money. So general liability is not going to pay for that.
Wow.
So it's where that's where the cyber is going to come in. So
That's
the trigger for payment is a cyber breach or cyber attack of some sort.
which, based off of the numbers we talked about on this, is rather
Is
unfortunately the high odds
high. Yeah.
comparatively than, maybe even, I don't know, fire, I
Yeah.
don't put other odds out there, but it seems like it's just as high up there.
Yeah. It's definitely
Uh,
something to consider as part of we'll
your
call your
risk.
insurance portfolio to make it sound cool.
That is very cool. Awesome, awesome. Well, that's funny. That ticked off one. Well, great. Let's take some other questions. Um, this one's interesting. I run a small e-commerce site. If I got hacked, would it cover the loss of income while my website was down?
Yes. A lot of these cyber policies, the full blown, again, these more robust policies will
Yeah.
cover loss of income also due to that cyber attack.
Oh, so yeah, because I mean, if you're offline as an
Yeah, you're
e-commerce
done.
company, I mean,
Yeah.
that's kind of taking it all away.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, I mean, take that e-commerce site and rather than a breach, have it ransomware, right? To where they actually lock it down for until now you not only have the downtime, but now you got to pay the ransom to get it up and going
Mm-hmm.
and make sure all your data is good and all that kind of a thing. So, yes, but to answer the question, yes, it does pay for business income.
That's and blowing my mind. I'm learning more every day or throughout this session. So this one's kind of, I'm gonna put it all together into one question. They're asking, we've kind of already addressed it. It's like, what kind of cyber policy should I have? Is there standards? They're extended. We kind of talked about the third party, the first party. Is
Yeah.
there any other kind of tidbits you should know or we should know about cyber policies that, are not all the same or kind of thing?
Yeah, they're not all built the same. So most of the time when you're looking into this, just ask for a detailed proposal, right? And don't feel bad about asking the agent to to go through it and what does this mean and what does that mean. But some policies will say like, okay, we're going to give $1 million for first and third party coverage, but we're only going to give 50,000 for ransom, or we're only going to do X amount for a phishing attack, where you transfer money fraud transfers. So you can also look at some of these what we call sublimits and make sure you're comfortable with those. Okay. Because, or there might be a policy say we're just doing $1 million across the board. So you need to just do a little bit of due diligence when you're looking at this and just go, hey, I don't feel comfortable with just only having 100,000 in this area. Is there another option?
Got it. And that's kind of like all
Yeah,
policies,
it's all
right?
it's
It's
with everything else, but that's, you know, they're not, these aren't really built the same. There's a lot of commonality, but it's
Mhm.
not like there's, like the general liabilities has what they call the insurance service office that's standardizing what that is. There's nothing really standardizing the actual cyber liability policy, although
Mhm.
there's commonality between a lot of them.
Interesting. This one, I'm reading this. It's a very specific use case, and I think it's the answer is yes, but I'm just going to throw it out because she took the time to write it. Um, Say somebody hacked my email list and emailed my clients and then scammed them. Where would that come into play?
Yeah, that's third party liability.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
that's right.
right. That's, yeah, because now they hacked your computer to get to somebody else. So the breach was through you that caused the third party harm.
Oh my gosh. You know how many websites have my email? You
Yeah.
know what I mean? It's like, oh, the exposure. Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, honestly, mostly like one of them said, what would make my premiums go up? That's kind of a loose.
Number of records, again, the industry, it's not so
Mhm,
much, I don't really see it going up demographically. Like,
mhm,
you're in California, a lot of times the property rate's higher in California than in Utah.
mhm.
So it's more of what your business operations are and how many records you have.
Got it. Got it. Um, well, awesome. I think that's most of the questions we had. Of course, shoot us over your questions after this if you're watching this later. We're happy to address them. The email should be on the website. Thank you to all of our attendees who came to this live. Chris, thank you so much because I learned
Oh,
so
thank
much,
you.
and I really hope this message gets out because I'm so scared for every small business owner I know, knowing that they're with hundreds of thousands of liability, and hopefully they have this. But I really appreciate it, and hope you have a great rest of the day.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Bye bye.